Hello, everyone, and welcome to C3 Metals' first ever live Q&A with the CEO. My name's Dan Symons. I'm the President and CEO of C3 Metals. Thank you for taking the time to join us today out of your busy schedules. This is our first time doing something like this, and it's something that we plan to do every 3 months or so, once a quarter. So then stakeholders and shareholders can keep well informed of our progress and what we're doing. With me today, I also have my colleague Karen Veray. Karen, maybe you can just give a wave to everyone who's there. We had 23 people register, I think, which is a pretty good turnout for our first ever event like this. And in my experience, as we do more and more of these, they'll pick up speed and attendance will pick up as well. Thank you for all your questions. We're going to get through as many of them as we can in an hour today that you've submitted. And then if there's time at the end, we will also take some questions through the chat function of this event. So as we're going through today, I encourage you to, or any questions that you have directly via the chat function of Zoom to Karen Veray, and then she can read those out if we have time towards the end. We do appreciate when people ask questions during the registration, as it allows us to prepare some materials. And just so everyone is aware, we are recording the event today, and a replay of this will be posted up on our website in the next couple days. So maybe without further ado, because we do have a lot to get through today, we'll just get going. And thank you again all for joining us. The first thing that I need to make sure to inform you is that today I will be making some forward-looking statements. These are based on the best information that we have in front of us today, but obviously things change and we cannot predict the future with 100% accuracy. So the first question that we got in was from Tom in the Pacific Coast in North America. Thanks, Tom, for joining us today and for your question. It was just around Jamaica politics. So I broke this down in two different ways. Just very simply, Jamaica's political system, just so people are aware, it's a parliamentary republic political system. There's a head of state, which is the president, which is elected by parliament and represents the unity of the nation. Then there's the head of the government, which is a prime minister, which is really the elected leader and is responsible for the day-to-day administration of the government. The legislature consists of two houses. There's a House of Representatives and then the Senate. There's a cabinet formed by the prime minister. And these are the heads of the specific government departments. These are typically elected members of the House of Representatives. Elections are held every 5 years. So like we're used to definitely here in Canada, it's actually very similar to the Canadian system. For those of you who are Canadian, when I know we do have people from Europe and all over North America, actually quite frankly over the world here today. So thanks for joining us. But this is the system in Jamaica. It's a democratic system. It's been in place for quite some time. But in case Tom was more asking about the government and the politics in Jamaica as it relates to mining, which is pertinent obviously to C3 Metals as a company exploring in Jamaica with quite a large mineral concession package. I think some people would be surprised to understand that mining is actually the second largest industry in the country. And there's a great history of mining, both in the colonial era in the 1600s with the Spanish and 1800s with the British, but more recently in modern times, in the last 70 years plus, Jamaica has been one of the biggest bauxite producers in the world, bauxite being a key mineral used in aluminum. There's actually an alumina refinery in the country, and Jamaica exports $500 million to $600 million US annually. The mining law has been in place for 75 years plus since 1947. Today, there's over 150 open pit aggregate mines and limestone mines, as a bulk of the island is limestone. But then more recently, there was a modern day gold mine called the Pennants Gold Mine, which was a small open pit operation that ran for a couple of years and closed in 2004. In terms of mining jurisdiction, has been fantastic from an exploration permitting standpoint, where we've been receiving exploration permits within 2 months of application. They're valid for 5 years and then can be renewed They give us unlimited drill platforms, drill holes over the entire concession. So it's just been a tremendous place to do business. And then there's very clearly in the regulation a way to convert your exploration licenses to mining licenses down the road. Corporate tax rate of 25%. Royalties are well defined in the mining law. So overall, it's a great place to do business, and we're very happy to be there. Just moving on, and thanks. We'll move on to Mark, also from the Pacific Coast, North America. Mark had asked a question regarding wanting to know if he could get a detailed update on the exploration plans in the Jamaican epithermal gold project. So I thought first what we could do is just start and walk through our package here. We've now identified, you can see where we're located down here in the center of the island. If you can see my mouse circling there, you can see where these bauxite operations are all over the island. As I said, the mining's the #2 industry in Jamaica. And we've been focused right here in the center of the island. There's a Crawl River fault that bisects the island of Jamaica, and it gives you great exposure to volcanic packages. And that's where we're focused. We have now identified 16 porphyry and 40 epithermal targets over a 30-kilometer strike extent. Since Mark's asking specifically about the epithermals, those are all these little green dots that you see all over the place here, from Main Ridge around Arthur Seat and down into Bella's Gate. These marks here that you see in Bella's Gate, these are some of the historic mines from the colonial era in the 1800s when the British were in here mining. And this is what they looked like as they were mining epithermals. You know, it's hard to get good data on this, but there are some old reports that we do have from Stamford Hill and Charing Cross, where during the 1850s, over a 4-year period from 54 to 57, 188 of copper was shipped back to England, grading over 14% copper. So also important to understand, a lot of these adits and old working areas from the colonial times are sitting within 500 meters to 3 kilometers from 12 of our porphyry targets. But just to move on and discuss a little bit more of the history around the epithermals. So there was mining there in the 1800s, but then more recently, the Pennants mine was put into production and ran from 2002 to 2004. It was a very small scale operation. You can see the historic resource that was reported was about 73 million tons, but importantly, it was running over 21 grams per ton. And this was one epithermal vein that was mined by OzJam. They put a shallow pit on it, and that actually sits, if we look where that sits right here in this little niche. So we do not own that old past producing mine, but we own all around it on 3 sides, on the west, north, and east. And you can see some of the epithermal targets up around there. More recently, what we've been focused on with the epithermals, this is a brand new discovery that we made just last summer, so very fresh, less than a year old. When we think about our Arthur Seat concession here, when we look at some of these epithermals, you can see these green dots here. This discovery was made this past summer. There was first time really getting boots on the ground. The only modern day exploration was Noranda, who was in mining bauxite in the 1960s, and they had some work, just some field exploration work up in the northwest corner near the Brandon Hill area, and they were finding some good copper grade in soil and rock chips. Down as we've looked into the southeast corner, we identified an outcropping vein system, and you can see some of the samples that we took off of this on the right-hand side of this slide. As we continue to progress, all these magenta triangles you see here are any of the samples grading over 1% copper all around this vein swarm. And we continue to do work announcing more and more assays out of this through our field work. And then finally, getting to the point where, you know, we're up to a 4.5 by 8 kilometer area of which, when we zoom in on the epithermals, because that's Mark's question, is a 3 kilometer by 5 kilometer area. Now, switching from copper to gold, as Mark was asking about gold, is every magenta triangle you see here now is graded over 2 grams per ton off of this vein system. We did poke some first scout holes into that second half of last year, and towards the end of the year, actually, sorry, it was the beginning of this year. We started in December, the drill program. We announced the results of that, and while we did not get into a high-grade shoot initially with our first 8 assays coming off of this, epithermals are notorious for being drill intensive. You really need to find that flex in the structure or the vein where the high grade shoots where the fluid would have pooled. But we did see what you want to see, where we see this is through a hand lens. You can see the gold, you can see the pyrite, which also looks like gold or known as fool's gold, and then bornite, which is a key copper sulfide mineral. This particular sample just over half a meter graded 7.6 grams per ton. So while we didn't get into a high grade shoot with our first 8 holes coming of this, we did identify that these veins were live and active, and it's something that we're going to be following up on. The other area that we're big on from an epithermal perspective and a gold perspective is over at our main ridge concession, which is just to the west of Arthur's Seat. You can see again, remember that producing Pennant's mine sits right in this little niche. We do not own it, but then right on the border, there's this historic drill hole drilled by the previous operator, and they hit 3.1 meters of 17 grams per ton, which was never followed up on. We've recently done some field work, and what we've identified is along this major Crawl River fault zone, you have all these splay faults shooting off of it. One of them here is called the Rio Minnow Fault, and this is more copper silver dominant. And then this Bennett Fault is more gold dominant. We've now mapped a 4-kilometer area. You can see some of the samples here grading anywhere from 1 gram to 12, actually up to 35 grams per ton along here, but we have not been in and drilling it yet. We did just receive our drill permit for Main Ridge. So between Bella's Gate, Arthur's Seat, and Main Ridge, we have drill permits to at least mid-2027, and then they can be extended. And we're good along this entire 30-kilometer area. So hopefully, Mark, that gives you a bit of a high-level overview of the epithermal targets that we have in Jamaica. Moving on, we'll answer a question from Roland that came in from Alberta, Canada. Thanks, Roland, for taking the time. There's a few questions here. Roland would like to know if there'd be regular operational updates from the drill program in Jamaica. Absolutely, there will be. We intend to kick off the next round of drilling beginning this summer, and it'll run through pretty much through the end of the year, probably through November. So we'll give you updates along the way of how that program's progressing. Is it possible to visit the site in Jamaica? Well, Roland, it is. We've hosted a couple trips out there now. It's a lot easier for us, as you can imagine. We get a lot of one-off requests for people to come down. It's easier for us if we can pool a group together, just so we're not constantly distracted with one-off trips and keep the team focused on the exploration work. But happy to host you, and if you'd like to email us separately after this, anyone on this, we can make sure that your name gets on a list for the next time that we're taking a group down. Timing the drill program is that we should be beginning this summer. And do we have the funds to go through the drill program? Yes, we do. We just closed a $5 million Canadian private placement, and the bulk of those funds are going to be used for the upcoming drill program in Jamaica. Moving forward, we had some questions from some of the people who have registered have come in, and they're similar. So we're putting some of these together. Barney's asking from London. Thanks for joining all the way from London, Barney. He's asking about what drivers we see to increase the share price. Is Peru effectively on ice until the political situation improves? Is Jamaica now the key focus for exploration? And what do we see as major milestones and the associated timeframes? And then a question about the copper price dropping recently and what's the cause. Daniel from Toronto has asked about the near-term catalysts. So one of the similar questions to Barney, as has Garrick from Australia, is asked about Peru, which was similar to a question that Barney had asked as well. So maybe we'll start with Peru. There's very, very well publicized in the news. There was a situation in Peru politically where the previous president was arrested, and the vice president was sworn in, and there was some turmoil and turbulence in the country around this. Fortunately for C3 Metals, we were not impacted outside for a couple of weeks, where the Cusco's airport was closed, and it made it a little difficult to get some supplies up to our exploration camp. But since then, really, it is, and you can talk to any company operating there, it is return to business as normal. I absolutely need to commend the Peruvian government on how quickly they were able to get the situation under control, and it's really been back to business as normal. So Peru, it's not so much the political situation as it is just the drill permitting. It takes a long time in Peru. It can take anywhere from when you acquire a new mineral concession, it can take sometimes 2 years and to just to get a drill permit. And it's something that at the PDAC, I had the pleasure of being invited to a round table with, there was about 20 other CEOs of, from big operating companies down to little explorers like C3 Metals. And we had an audience with the Prime Minister of Peru, the head of economic development, and the head of the energy and mines department. And you can be rest assured during this roundtable, the number one focus from all of us was the length of time and the bureaucratic nature of what we need to go through to secure permits to allow us to drill. Peru is one of the lengthiest, if not the lengthiest area in the world. It's certainly the lengthiest in any place I've ever operated. But people tend to put up with it because the country is so mineral endowed. And when we think about copper, Peru is the second largest copper producer in the world. So it's something that we are collectively as an industry trying to work with the government. The government has been, the rhetoric coming out of the government is they're looking into ways that they can streamline the process and speed it up, and we'll see where that gets to. In terms of, is Jamaica now the key focus for us? We really like what we have in both Peru and Jamaica. We're just in a situation right now where in Peru, we expect to be able to be in there drilling soon, but we currently do not have authorization to do the work that we would want to do. And then also we're sitting with these really juicy looking targets in Jamaica. So that's where we're focusing our next round. In terms of what drivers do we see for a near-term catalyst for the share price? Well, the first thing that you're going to see come out of us is before the end of June, we should be publishing a first resource on our Montana de Cobre deposit in Peru. This sits along a 28-kilometer belt that runs through our property on the eastern side of our property. It's one of several targets that have been identified. It's the first one that we've systematically drill tested, and we'll have the first resource coming out on that quite soon within the next 6 weeks. And then we also kicked off metallurgical test work on the Montana de Cobre deposit, so that'll be coming out in the second half of the year. We filed for a modified drill permit because it's a lot more efficient to modify an existing permit than it is to go after a new one for the area around Montana de Cobre to extend that. And we think that should be coming in the second half of the year, which will allow us to get in and drilling. And then our number one target that we have on our package in Peru is, you may remember, we've expanded our package quite a bit, started with 5,700 hectares. We're up now close to 30,000 hectares. So we've expanded the package quite a bit. And I would say the number one target for us is what we call Khaleesi. It's on the western side of our package, which runs along the Khaleesi belt. And we're working towards drill permits there for 2024. I think that the next news item, obviously, being the resource Montana de Cobre, which should underpin the value of the company when you think of us sitting around a 30 million Canadian market cap. But then, we are an exploration company, and we all know the market likes to see drill results, and that we want to see positive drill results also. So, the big catalyst will be as we get in drilling this summer and through the balance of the year, as we get drilling in Jamaica and the results coming out of that program. Moving on, we'll just talk about both Peter from Ottawa and Jeffrey from North Grower, both Canadians, had asked about what do we expect more, when do we expect more drilling in Peru, when do we expect to be back working in Peru? This is a really good question. I think I'll just walk through what we see with the portfolio and what we'd like to get to. You can see these two mineralized belts that run through the property. And as I said, we've now amassed close to 30,000 hectares. Along the Jasper belt, this is a 28-kilometer magnetite belt that runs through the property. We've identified 13 skarn targets near surface copper gold skarn targets. Montana de Cobre, where we're coming out with the first resource, is identified with this yellow star. That's the first one to be systematically drill tested, but you can see we have a lot of work in front of us with all these targets in front of us. And then over on the western side of the property, there's a parallel belt, which we call the Khaleesi belt, and the Khaleesi project identified in the red here. What it's going to take, where we're going to be able to get back in drilling the soonest, will be in and around Montana de Cobre. You can see the black dotted line around here. That's our existing DIA. And then you can see this bolder gray line around here, and the arrows which show where we're expanding this. This is close to a 75% increase in ground where we'll be able to get it and drill. It's going to give us 24 more drill platforms and 53 more holes. The bulk of the drilling, nearly all of it, has been around the Montana de Cobre deposit, where we'll come out with that first resource. We did have a few holes into the Creste de Verde skarn target, and that remains open. Montana de Cobre itself is open in 3 directions still. And then we have not done any drilling yet down towards the south of Montana at the target Calion de Oro, which we're big on as well. But just looking at what these targets are, Montana de Cobre, this is where we're coming out with the resource. This is a skarn target sitting up over here. To the northwest of that, you have the Creste Verde target where we have skarn, where we have a few holes into, very wide spaced at this point. And with this new modification, we'll have the license to go in and continue to drill there. But what looks like's happened, what we think has happened, our geologic model is there's either stacked skarn system or porphyry down here. That's really the fluids come up. It came up this thrust fault. It was thrust over the Ferrabamba and up across here. We believe Montana de Cobre and Creste Verde used to be just one giant skarn system, but then you can see this valley in the middle where it would have been eroded off by a glacier in the past. So this is a key target for us to get back in here, because now that we've identified with a couple deeper holes this thrust fault, we feel like we have a good idea where the source of all this is coming from. Down to the south, where we'll be able to get in here at Calion de Oro, you can see this is actually a bull ring. It was part of a CSR program that we put in for the local community. You can see limestone on one side and the diorite on the other. But we have outcropping epithermal veins. You can see the diorite with iron oxide ripping through it. The alteration is quite impressive. So this is also something that warrants some drill testing as well. And then when we think further out, this is Khaleesi in 2024. We hope to be able to have license to be in here and drill. You can see what looks like a little community over here on the left side of the slide, where we just above where we label epithermal veins. That's actually informal miners in mining. And you can see some of the samples that we've had here. Epithermal quartz breccias assayed 2.6% copper, 6 grams per ton gold. And then we have outcropping skarn mineralization that with bornite, where we're seeing 2.6% copper with a lighter gold number. And then over where we see diorite porphyry is assayed 1.4% copper and nearly a gram per ton gold. So this is one of the best targets within C3 Metals portfolio, and just with the process of what we need to go through with the rules and regulations in Peru, we think the earliest we can get in and drill test this will be sometime next year. But it's a heck of a project when we're seeing one, you have informal miners. That's always a good sign. 2, we see outcropping polymetallic veins, skarn mineralization, and porphyry mineralization at Khaleesi. And then one of the other key targets for us in Peru is just down on the south end of that jasperoide belt. We have over a 3-kilometer stretch here with informal miners working. You can see some of these workings, another 1.5 kilometers here, where there's outcropping epithermal veins. There's copper and sulfides and copper and oxides. So just an abundance of targets in front of us. Is just going to take a bit of time to get the permits to be able to get in and do the exploration work. So hopefully that gives you a good update on where we are and how we're advancing things in Peru. Moving forward, the next question came in from London, was what's the routes to monetizing Montana de Cobre? And considering the land grab around Jasperoidy package by majors, are we getting interest from any of the majors in the region? All good questions. In terms of monetizing Montana de Cobre, I think what we'd like to see is define a couple more of these similar to, we think that there's, we've identified 13 along this 28-kilometer trend. If you have a couple more of them, then you're going to have the scale that you need to have a reasonable operation. So we're going to need to get in and drill test those. But there's lots of ways that you can do this. Obviously, we're commercial. You can develop it yourself. You can partner. You can sell. I mean, I think all of this for us right now might be a little bit too early until we get in and see what else we have there. But we have a fiduciary duty to our shareholders. Everything is always available for a price, but we see a lot more upside that we think we can unlock there as well. In terms of the people around us, I got to be careful, obviously, what I say, but so I can't mention any specific companies. But I will say, one thing that we've done a very good job of, and really commend the team. I joined the company last September, and the team's done an excellent job of picking up ground in a key copper producing area in Peru, which is the second largest producer globally. You can see, we're just north of Hudbay, where they're mining at both Constancia and their satellite Pampacancha deposit. MMG's Labumbus mine is operating. You have First Quantum Minerals with you look at the tons and grains of Haquera, that looks like it'll be a mine someday. BHP and Rio Tinto have really moved in here within the last 12 to 24 months and tied up a bunch of ground, and they're continuing to pick up ground. So we've done a good job of, and you can see Hudbay's come up and they now surround us in areas. So I think we've done a really good job of picking up ground in the area. To answer that question, is there any interest? Without getting into too many specifics, I'll just say anytime you can pick up over time 28 kilometers of two parallel belts running through your property and position that's close to 30,000 hectares or 300 square kilometers, our phone does ring, and we do have dialogue with parties on this package, but we're right now, at least for today, looking to see what we can do to continue to add value here. We had some questions come in from Rolf in Germany, as well as Robert from Ottawa. Rolf had asked about, well, he stated, we know we need to show some spectacular drill results before the next capital raise. So where is this raise where we raised 5 million Canadian? Where is the dollars going? What's the timeline for that? And while we're focused on exploration in Jamaica, are there low-cost things that we can do at the same time in Peru? That's a really good question. And then Robert had asked about progress at Epidote Hill, which I believe Robert means Epidote Ridge in Jamaica. And that really ties into where some of this money that we've just raised is going to go, and the investment we're going to be making through drilling. So I thought what I'd do is first answer the question in Peru. Some of the low-cost things that we're doing for Peru at Jasperoidy is, we're still picking up ground. We've actually recently picked up some ground all here. Actually, if I go back to this slide, all this up to the north, this is all new. We've just picked this up fairly recently. So we're still picking up ground in the area as we go out and look at what's available and what makes sense. We're doing metallurgical work. We're going to have the first resource come out on Montana de Cobre. That's kept us very busy. And then it really is just focusing on the community work we need to do and the government work that we need to do to move the permitting process forward so we can get in and explore these other areas. So those are some of the low-cost things we can do in Peru in the meantime. And then walking through what we're going to do with this next round of financing, where the bulk of it's going is going into Jamaica. As you know, one of the blessings is we've tied up along a 30-kilometer extent. We've now identified 16 porphyry and 40 epithermal targets, which is just fantastic. But I think some people look at this and say, well, it's a little overwhelming. Where are you going to go and how are you going to prioritize this? Well, all those 16 porphyry targets are the stars that you see here. And the difference between the green and the red is the red are ones that have either C3 drilling or historical drilling by previous companies into them where we've confirmed ore grade mineralization. So we know that we have the grade in some of these porphyry targets. What we need to confirm is, do we have the tons and the volume to make something economic? So that's really what this next program is about, is testing some of that depth potential. So if I just zoom in on this Bella's Gate area, because that's where this next round of investment is going to go, we're focused on where we know we have ore grade mineralization and looking to see what we can do to add tonnage. Just zooming in on Bella's Gate, this is a very busy slide, but I'll just break it down for you. Every label that you see in the red with the red background is an epithermal target, and every label you see with a black background is a porphyry target. The white lines that you see cutting across, those are IP lines that were run in 2015 and 2016. And there was a question about Epitote Ridge, which sits here. You can see the bulk of the drilling has been around what we call Connors and Camel Hill. You can see all these white dots are drill holes. This whole area sits within a 4 kilometer by 3 kilometer area with good copper and soils. And then down around this target Coffee that has never been tested, there's a nearly 2.5 by 2.5 kilometer area of over 600 ppm copper and soil, very, very high grade in soils. So that's one of our targets as well. But if you remember those red stars on the previous slide, those are what you see here at Henley, Provost, Geo Hill, Camel Hill, and Connors. If we take a moment and just look at a slice through the ground that covers Connors, Epitote Ridge, and Geo Hill, just to give you some of the history here. At Geo Hill, in the 1990s, BHP drilled a hole 99 meters, 3.8% copper, only 29 meters from surface. And then further down the hole hit another 27 meters of 0.3 copper. Gold was not assayed for at the time. The hole actually ended in 0.38% copper. It was a scout hole with a small drill rig. Over at Connors, Prime Exploration drilled also in the early 90s, 149 meters of 0.5% copper, quarter gram per ton, gold only 12 meters below surface. And then you fast forward to 2014, Oz Minerals is in, and they drill 116 meters of 0.58% copper at Connors and nearly 0.5 gram gold, 28 meters from surface. So you have to ask yourself, well, if people are getting these ore grade results so close to surface, why are they not here, and how does C3 end up with this package? Well, the answer really comes down to the geophysics were done after this drilling. And when you look at what we're looking at on top is the magnetic anomalies, and what we're looking at the bottom is chargeability anomalies, or IP, where you can really pick up those sulfides or those sulfide minerals. And you can see what was happening, especially here at Connors, is people were drilling through, and then they were hitting this pre-mineral stock that's very clearly identified by that chargeability anomaly. What has never been drilled, it gets back to the question that we had on Epitote Ridge, is down here at Epitote Ridge. Now, Oz Minerals flew these geophysics, and from what I understand in the conversations I've had, their technical team and their geology team really liked what they saw, and they didn't want to leave, but it's pretty well documented. You can go back and look. There was a CEO change at Oz Minerals, and there was a strategic change corporately, where they made the decision to really bring everything back closer to Australia and not be so spread out. That became C3's opportunity. We drilled the first ever hole trying to target Epitote Ridge. We set up a drill pad at Connors, and we were trying to punch a hole all the way through Connors and then down what looks like this fluid channel, where we think that this is all converging at depth based on what we see with geophysics. We announced last September, we hit 309 meters of 0.4 copper, 0.33 gold. Unfortunately, the drill rig we had at time was really not designed to get to this depth. It was actually, sorry, I shouldn't say that. It actually was designed to get those depths, but it wasn't able to do it. So we've now, with this next round of funding, we've identified a larger drill rig that we're bringing in to test this. And what you can see we're going to do is we've already set up the drill platform up here at Epitote Ridge, and we're going to poke a couple holes down into this and try and get into what we're interpreting and see if this is the bornite core or the guts of the system. because when we look at these, and now what we're looking at here is a bird's eye view looking down, and we're taking a slice 100 meters down off the, we remove the top 100 meters and we look 100 meters below, and you can see the magnetic anomaly up top and the chargeability down below. And you can see, okay, Geo Hill, Connors, Camel Hill, these all look like distinctly separate targets. But when you take it down 400 or 500 meters, you can see they're all converging at depth. And this is what gets us excited, because all the drilling here has been relatively shallow. For instance, these drill holes that you see at Connors, the average drill depth is only 300 meters. At Camel, they're only averaging 185 meters. You know, speaking of Camel, which just sits just south of Epidote Ridge down here, where you see this star here, you can see some of the old drilling. I mean, there's multiple holes that have ended in ore grade mineralization. There just has not been the drill rig in country to be able to do the job to go deeper. So we've drilled a couple holes also that have ended in mineralization. So this next rig we're bringing in, we can do some shallower step outs along this anomaly, and then we're going to go down this limb and see what we have down below all of this. So that's part of the next program as well. And then one of the other targets that we'll test on this next program is up at Provost, where again, remember these geophysics were done after this drilling. So where you see these two historic holes with the white dots on top, you can see this one here, PVT16002, it went down this mag high, down this fluid pathway, hit nearly 300 meters of 0.3 copper, just over 0.13 grams per ton gold, some high grade copper within that. It's never ended in mineralization. It's never been followed up on. And then you can see here that this hole 03 was drilled outside of that mag high, because it was drilled before the magnetic was run, and it did not hit anything. So we have the benefit now of overlaying all the historical drilling with the geophysics and saying, this is really working as a tool. Let's go out and test these anomalies. So that's what the next program is going to do. We're pretty confident that we're going to be hitting ore grade mineralization, because we know we're drilling in areas with known ore grade mineralization. The big question is going to be is, what is the depth extent and what is the step out extent on some of these targets? So that's what we're going to be doing with this next round, and that's what we've raised these next dollars for. John from Montreal had asked if we are strictly focused on gold and copper, or if we found evidence of other metals. Thanks for your question, John. One thing I'll say is we have a little bit of silver that we pick up here, but not anything really to write home about at Montana de Cobre, where we have the most of our drilling. Up to the north of Montana de Cobre, a couple of these targets were actually drilled in the past by a previous company that was focused on iron. They were not assayed for copper, unfortunately, although there's notes on copper that can be seen visually in the reports. But you're looking at, when you put those together, 600 million tons that were drilled out looking for an iron ore deposit. And we think that there's a good copper chance for copper there with what we see as well. We just need, again, to have drill permits to go in and get after it. And then over on the Khaleesi belt, we do see some polymetallic veining, where you're seeing not just copper and gold, but also some silver and lead and zinc in some of these polymetallic veins. So there are a few others items as well. And down in Jamaica, we do get some silver. This is the highest grade sample we've seen to date, close to 5,000 grams silver. But really, I will say our focus is primarily copper. And if we can find copper deposits with gold associated with them, those are the ones that we feel, if you look through the history, have really the best chance. Once you get these things up and running, the gold usually covers your operating cost, and the copper falls to the bottom line. So that's really the focus for the company is copper. And if we can find some gold along with it, that's fantastic. Jamie from Toronto has asked about looking at our portfolio in Jamaica. It's a very large prospective system with many targets. It's going to require a lot of drilling and capital. Would we consider bringing in a deep-pocketed partner for a portion? of the project, or will we continue to go it alone? One of the things I like about the company, whether you think about Jamaica, Peru, if you think about the two different belts in Peru, if you think about what we have here with all the porphyry and epithermal targets, I think it gives us a lot of optionality to potentially in the future consider bringing in partners. We have had interest from others to take a look at both Peru and Jamaica in our portfolios that we've put together. I think that getting something put together and bringing in a partner would be relatively easy for us to do based on some of the interest to date. I just feel like and when the board feels it's a bit early and premature at this point in time. We'd like to get in and know and get a firmer grasp on exactly what we have. When you think about things like Arthur's Seat, it was just that whole vein system was just found last summer, and it only has eight drill holes with assays back on it. Main Ridge, we've never poked a drill hole in ourselves. It's sitting next to a past producing mine that was running very high grade. We have a 4-kilometer extension there now. And then with all these porphyries at Bella's Gate, we'd really like to know whether they are converging at depth or not, like the geophysics is telling us that they are. And that's what this next program is about. So I think we have a little bit more work to do before we want to think about bringing in a partner. But the good news for our shareholders, it does give us optionality down the road with that option available to us to bring in a deep pocketer partner either in Jamaica or Peru. Albert from Morrisburg, Canada. Thanks, Albert, for joining us today. Albert's asked, is it true that if everybody had an electric car, there would not be enough copper on Earth to supply the batteries? Albert, I have no idea. I have no idea if that's true or not. The one thing I will say is, I read a report last year that was talking about the transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. And if you look at the amount of copper that is needed it's not just electric vehicles, that's a big component, but it's also, wind turbines, solar panels. Really any clean energy form uses quite a bit of copper. And when you look at last year's, 2021's global output on supply brought to the market, you would need to get completely off of fossil fuels. It was estimated you would need 180 years worth of that supply to transition to clean energy globally. And I just, that makes us very bullish on copper. That's why we're exploring for copper, and that's our primary metal of focus. And, I think we all know, copper is a critical mineral. There's the International Copper Association is estimating a 50% increase in consumption by 2050. We saw in May 2021, about a year ago or 2 years ago, copper had hit $5. A pound. There's been a global shift towards renewable energy and infrastructure development. Governments around the world are being very supportive for critical mineral exploration and development. And if you think about how long it takes to bring supply to market, companies are trying to increase exploration efforts, and the industry is looking at ways to innovate and changes in technology. But the reality is the development of new supply takes a lot of capital and it takes a lot of time. So our view at C3 is that we are going to be in a prolonged copper market. I just realized there was a question earlier I did not answer about the copper price and the recent pullback that we've seen. My personal view is that pullback is really more of a financial move than a fundamental move when we look at all the supply demand fundamentals. I believe we're going to be in an overall long-term bull trend on copper, and it's going to go higher. I think that what we're experiencing now gives investors an opportunity to position themselves. And anytime that there's fear of recession and pullback in spending on some of these initiatives, that may slow down the very short-term nature of that bull run, but I don't think it eliminates that bull run. As these things, we can clearly see the world is on a path towards renewable energy sources. It's a strong mandate from governments around the world, and we're trying to be part of the solution by finding economic copper ore bodies. That really concludes then the questions that came in through registration. So perhaps I will pop it open now to Karen to start going through some of these questions that have come through the chat.
There are two questions that came in. The first one's from Tom Calandra.
Mm-hmm.
His question is, so you have porphyry style, epithermal style, gold oxides here, copper there, and silver, etc. across the Jamaica concessions. Do you risk investor confusion with your messaging? This must be a concern.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Tom. Hi, I can see you there. Good to see you again. It is, I think C3 from just even a junior explorer is already a little more complicated just with the whole Peru and Jamaica. If you're in a better market, there would be, and again, this speaks to the optionality in the portfolio is, opportunity to spin into two separate vehicles. But, in the market we're in today, where junior exploration is currently not, it's not the hottest market. You create two overheads. There's pros and cons for both of those things. I will say I think we can do a better job of saying our primary focus is copper, for all the reasons that we spoke about here today. But we do like when copper is associated with gold for all the reasons that I mentioned as well. Any byproduct type metals that you can get in there only typically, as long as you can recover them, improves the economics of a deposit. When you think about the big copper porphyries around the world, several of them have gold credits that really, as I said, once you get them up and running and make that capital investment, the gold covers the operating cost profile and the copper falls to the bottom line, and they can be extremely profitable. And those are the types of deposits that we know all the big guys are looking for, and that's what we're trying to find. So that's the primary focus. Whether it's oxide, sulfide, epithermal, porphyry, I mean, we're after big deposits. So, we're looking for large copper gold deposits. And typically we're going to find those more in porphyries. But when you see a 5 by 3 kilometer epithermal area, we know, for instance, the question at Bellas Gate with some of these porphyries is, we know from some of the drilling you have the grade, is do you have the volume? And if these converge at depth, which they look like they do from geophysics, but it hasn't been drill tested, so we need to drill test that, then we're pretty confident we're going to get the volume and you're off to the races. With what we see up at Arthur's Seat with the epithermals is, you can go and map those epithermals. We know we'll have the volume. The question is going to be, do you have the grade to make it work? And so far we've seen good grade at some of the samples on surface, but through the first few holes, we have not seen the ore grade that you would like to see, although epithermals are drill intensive. So ideally, what we would like to do is we would like to get some momentum behind the company with some positive results, and then on a future capital raise, go out and be targeting both porphyries and epithermals concurrently, where epithermals are drill intensive but much shallower holes. You can bang out a lot really quick, where porphyries, we're going to have to drill some deeper holes that take some more time. And I think it gets back to Jamie's question earlier. If you get down that road, that's one of the checkpoints where you would look at the market and you'd say, okay, is it better to bring in a deep-pocketed partner, or is it better to just keep going alone? I don't think we're there yet, but we could be there with some success in the not too distant future. So it's something that we can evaluate and look at in real time. But yes, it is a bit of a complicated story, and we just need to do a better job, I think, messaging that copper is the focus, and if it comes with gold, all the better. Do we have any other questions there, Karen?
We do. I have a two-part question from Daryl Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
And his question is, what is your expected sample to lab turnaround time, since in the recent past, it seems to have been quite elongated? And the
Mhm.
second part of his question is, are you having problems with getting a drill that will go deep enough? It seems that you have the same issue in Peru and Jamaica.
So maybe I'll start with the second question first. It's not hard to get a drill for deep drilling in Peru. We can source one. There's lots of, because there's so many companies active in Peru, there's lots of drill contractors already set up there. So that wouldn't be an issue. The issue in Peru is more just, and it's not a C3 metals issue. It's whether you're a big operating company, a little exploration company, a foreign company, a Peruvian company. Everyone's got the same issue. The timing it takes to get drill permits is prohibitive. But we're working our way through that process. So it's more just getting the drill permits in Peru. In Jamaica, it has been challenging historically getting a drill. Companies, because they're not set up there, they ask for big contracts to make it worth their while, and it's hard for us to commit to a big contract without having some initial success momentum to then, okay, let's go get after it. Um, the good news is we have identified 4 different options for bringing in a bigger rig. We're very close to looks like committing to one of those options, and it would allow us to be drilling this summer, which is what we expected. So we are going to be able to get a bigger rig into Jamaica, although historically it has been a challenge to get that in, just with the size program that we're looking at in the 5,000 to 6,000 meters. To answer your first question on lab turnaround time, it depends what mineral you're looking at. Gold comes off faster than copper. Copper has been taking about 8 weeks. Gold's taking around 5 to 6 weeks. I think one of the things that we experienced coming into the PDAC, and then before that, the BMO conference, which is arguably the largest institutional investor conference in metals and mining space, that's at the end of February, is, companies will, at times around some of these big events, they'll pay to fast track their assays and jump the queue. Assay labs, this is really where they make the most of their juice, is when people pay for rush jobs. They don't make a ton on just doing the regular assays. So it just becomes very hard. So it's not just C3, it's any little junior. It becomes very hard to justify that cost, and you really don't want to get in the habit of having to pay extra to rush all your assays to get them out quickly. But right now, I would say, the last I saw, it's about 5 to 6 weeks for gold, or about 8 weeks for copper from the time we get them in.
I've a last minute question that came in from Rolf.
Yeah. Yes.
His question is, you mentioned to buy your own drill rigs to keep costs down. Can you give some color if that is still valid?
Absolutely, Rob. We've purchased our own rig. It's going to be good for targeting the epithermals around Jamaica and testing some of the step outs on some of these porphyry targets. It is good till about 400 meters depth, so it's not going to get into some of the holes I showed you during this talk today, that we're going to go after some of the deeper targets. But it is going to be, what it's going to allow us to do, it's going to allow us to do quite a few scout holes very quickly. And then and very, very cost efficiently. And then when we get in, and if you have success with some of those scout holes, then you can bring the big rig over before you spend the bigger dollars with a contract rig. So that's really the purpose of it. The investment for that rig was $200,000, and that got us the rig, the parts, the shipping to Jamaica. It's actually in Jamaica now. We are waiting now for the rods and some of the ancillary parts to arrive, but the rig is arrived. It's cleared customs, so we'll be able to get some scout holes in very quickly and cheaply with our own rig, and then that if that warrants, then we can bring a bigger rig over and continue to test those areas.
I do have another question. I do.
Sure.
I have a question from Alan S. from Scotland. And his question
Yes.
to you is, please remind me when Bellas Gate drilling starts and size of the program.
Yeah, we think we're going to have that program up and going in the next 2 months. So it'll be this summer, I would say, targeting late June and or early July to get that program going. The size of that program is 5 to 6,000 meters. We have, the main focus for those holes with that bigger rig that's coming in are going to be at Provost, where we had that 300-meter hole ending in ore grade mineralization to test the depth extent there. We're going to target also at Camel, where you've had multiple holes ending in ore grade mineralization, where the average drill depth is only 185 meters. And then the big one for us is testing underneath Epidote Ridge, where it looks like you have potentially Camel, Connors, and Geo Hill all converging. It's never been drill tested, and we have the platform ready, so we'll get a couple holes under there as well. The target depth for a lot of these holes is, look, the rig we're bringing in can do 1,500 meters. We're not about to start poking 1,500-meter holes, but the target depth, we're really targeting around 700 meters. But I will say, if we are visually in mineralization, copper is a lot easier than gold to estimate what you're in visually. If our geologists say, look, we're still in it, we'll let the hole run, and we may let a couple holes run 1,000 meters to get them down there. And I think if we're fortunate enough to come out with 1,000-meter hole of fairly consistent mineralization, that's going to very much excite the market and put us on track to start delineating a resource there. Was there anything else the last couple?
That's all I have from the chat.
Listen, everybody, I really want to thank you for taking the time, to make these events successful, and we can keep doing them. It does require participation from your side to have us have the questions to run through. So I really appreciate the time. This is something that I'm very passionate about, is keeping our shareholders very well informed. My background, I have a financial background, but I've come up through the investor relations side of the mining business, as well as the corporate development side, primarily focused around mergers and acquisitions. And I find that these platforms can be useful. And with my previous company, just anecdotally, the first time we did one of these it was brought on because does anyone here remember March 31st, 2020, and what was happening in the world around that time with COVID and everything? So I was with the previous company, and we announced an acquisition on that date, and we were acquiring a company for an operating mine in Nevada. The last company I was with, we operated multiple mines, and with that, we inherited a very large retail shareholder base, where with the company that we were acquiring, which made up about 25% on the pro forma of the company coming together. And I was just racking my brain, how am I going to reach all these people when you can't go see anyone or do anything? And it's a lot of people to try and get in touch with over the phone. So we started hosting these events once a quarter, and we started with less than 10 people on that first one, and by the time we ended, we had close to 100. So usually if we just do this every 3 months or so, it'll keep everyone well informed. I encourage you to reach out to any friends or other investors if they'd like to participate as well. We'd really appreciate the participation. The recording will be up in a couple of days on the website. Thank you all again. We don't want to hold you hostage. Thank you all again for your time, and look forward to continuing to move forward, and let's go and make a discovery together. Thank you.